everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be here with us. It looks like we have a good group of people, so we're just going to get started. My name is Marianne Watson, and I lead client success here at Maven. The holidays are upon us, so we are so glad to be here with you to talk today about some really important topics around our mental health. We'll be recording this and sharing it to you and your colleagues afterwards. But if you have any questions, you can drop them into the Q&A bubble on the side of your screen, and we'll get to as many as we can after the session. So let's get started. We thought we might start with a quick poll. We know that there's a lot on everyone's minds right now, but if you can all just try to pick the one option that is critical to you right now, that will help us see where we're going with this conversation. And we'll just wait to see for everyone to vote here. You should see a pop-up on your screen. Okay, so here's the results. No surprise here. We have majority of the people just generally feeling run down and burnt out and, spread out between the rest, but don't worry, we'll cover all of this and more in our conversation today. And before I kick it over to our provider, I wanted to say a quick word about Maven. You're all here today because your company offers Maven as a free benefit to you. We provide 24/7 virtual care for women and families with specialized programs in pregnancy, fertility, and more. You can use this to connect with doctors, specialists, and coaches on your schedule whenever you need support. You get access to our deep library of trustworthy, judgment-free content and classes, and connect with others going through similar experiences. And you can learn more about us at the link at the bottom of your screen, and that'll be up throughout this session, so don't worry about writing it down right now. So it is my privilege now to introduce all of you to Mercedes Samudio. Mercedes is a licensed clinical social worker and parenting coach. And if that's not enough, she's also a best-selling author of the book, Shame-Proof Parenting. Welcome, Mercedes. Thank you for joining us. Mercedes is just one of the remarkable providers available to you on Maven, and we're really grateful for her for being with us today, fresh off her latest appearance from Good Morning America a couple weeks back. So thanks, Mercedes. I'll kick it over to you. Oh, I think you're still on mute. There we go.
I'm muted. Here I am. Welcome. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and thank you, Maven, for having me. And so today we're going to talk about some of the things that we kind of just talked about a little bit in the poll. I saw that a lot of us are feeling really run down and burnt out, and I think that's even being exacerbated by the current holiday season. So hopefully these tips will support you. And so the first thing we'll talk about a little bit is crisis fatigue, and what is it and what can you do about it? And so one of the things I think is important is to really understand what is crisis fatigue. And it's really about kind of having all of your coping skills overwhelmed. And I feel like we've been in this space for most of the year this year. And so you're dealing with all of this overwhelm, and on top of the overwhelm, there's more uncertainty. And so in order to kind of support yourself and get through it, really thinking about giving yourself space and come to your own kind of definitions about what it is that makes you feel like you're in crisis. We're all in crisis right now, but what does it look like for you, and how is it showing up for you? I think it's really important to understand that we have to talk about it, right? And so not feeling like you are a bad person or less than because you're experiencing crisis fatigue, but understanding that it's important to let others know about it. You also really want to talk about using I statements and talking about what you're actually experiencing. So instead of just saying, everything sucks and this is so overwhelming, really saying things like, I feel tired, I feel overwhelmed, I feel stressed. It really allows you to then tap into what you're really feeling and what you might need to kind of help you manage that space. Next, we'll talk a little bit about as kind of the holiday season, right? And I think that it's really important, and I've seen this with a lot of my clients, that on top of an already stressful year, many of us are also trying to figure out how are we going to manage the holiday season. I think we all know that the holiday season is already a stressful time of the year, even in the best of circumstances. And so this year, I think we have to first and foremost realize that this is not a typical holiday season. We learned that from a couple of weeks ago at Thanksgiving, trying to navigate that. And we're going to kind of come up on it again for Christmas or for any of the other holidays that you celebrate during this time. And so, first and foremost, realize that I can't hold myself to the same standards that I held myself to prior to a year like this. Really talk to everyone in the house. And I think this is a perfect time for everyone to sit down and say, what were you expecting for this year? What are you needing for this year? And from talking about all of that, finding a healthy compromise where each of us gets something that we're looking for during this holiday season, but at the same time, we're maintaining our own levels of safety and need. You have to also realize that no is hard. If you're someone who likes to take down notes, you can write that down, right? No is really hard. But I think you have to also acknowledge that others are feeling things when we say no, and just being honest about what that no means. No, we're not going to come to the house this year because we're practicing social distancing. No, we're not going to do a gift exchange this year because that's outside of our comfort level, right? And just understanding that your no is just as important as your family's feelings or the people's feelings who you're talking about. But it doesn't mean that you have to, tell them yes or kind of just say whatever they want to do. It's okay for you to say no, and it's okay for others to not always understand that. And then, too, I think one of the ways that we can really find some way to enjoy our holidays is to really start building new traditions. So, thinking about different things that you can do where maybe last year everyone did a gift exchange at the company office, maybe figuring out something else to do with your team that doesn't involve having to be together. Or maybe last year you guys had this huge, big family dinner, but maybe doing something different with just your family in your household to see how that might feel. So that way you can still find that joy that comes with the holiday season. Next, kind of talking a little bit about having less guilt around self care. One thing that I will share is that self care, because it has become kind of commercialized in our lives, we tend to scoff at, oh, self care, oh, yeah. But it's really important for us to pay attention to the fact that self care really is about re energizing and recharging yourself. That's all it's about. And so it doesn't have to cost money, and it doesn't have to be these luxurious spa days, right? It could literally be making sure you eat today. It could literally be taking a couple of minutes away from your computer and your Zoom just to go outside and get some fresh air if it's not snowing outside, right? It could be making sure that, you do something kind for yourself, like giving yourself, a couple of minutes to read a book or to just kind of close your computer and take a break, right? And so realizing that self care is on this spectrum. It doesn't always have to be things that cost money or feel luxurious. It can literally just be making sure you're taking care of yourself that day. Eating, drinking water, and going to sleep. If that's all you did today, you did some self care for yourself. Like you actually did that. Also thinking about building your self-care practice over time. And so instead of saying, I'm going to just start drinking water, right, giving yourself some parameters where I'm going to try to drink 1 glass of water for the next 2 weeks and see how that feels for me, right? And really building up your self-care and not making yourself feel bad when maybe you skip one day where you don't drink any water. That doesn't mean you've completely failed. It just means you're still working on building that practice of reaching for water instead of something else when it comes time to hydrate yourself. And I say that as someone who's had to learn to do that the same as well. And then also, too, just really think about this. A good self care routine means that after you've done that, you feel better, you feel recharged, and you feel rejuvenated. If that's how you feel afterwards, then that's a great thing to add into your self care routine. And then lastly, let's talk about how can we replenish and restore ourselves so that way we can be ready for 2021. This is usually a time of the year where we start to plan for next year, right? We start to think about our New Year's resolutions. We start to wrap up and reflect on this year and start thinking about what are we going to do for next year. And I know in a year like this with so much uncertainty, it can be hard to make those type of plans. And so really thinking about noticing when you tell yourself, or you think I'll feel better when, and that when is I'll feel better when, we can go outside again, or I'll feel better when the vaccines come out, or I'll feel better whatever that is. And really just start making present decisions about kind of right now, I feel good when. I feel good when I can talk to my family and friends. I feel good when I can zone out and watch a great Netflix TV show, right? Really thinking about presently now and understanding that you can have that own internal optimism where you feel good about the things you want to move forward on, and understand that sometimes we have no control over the external world around us, and that we have to really kind of sometimes separate that as we're thinking about our own optimism. And then also remove the pressure of New Year's resolutions. I feel like previous years we've tried to do that, but I think this year is a really good year to stop making ourselves feel like we have to make a New Year's resolution. And instead, just think about breaking things up into smaller, more approachable, and more attainable steps. So again, I'll go back to the water example. Instead of saying, when January 1st starts, I'm going to be drinking more water, really just say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try to fill up a glass of water every day, or a thing of water, and drink that every day for the next 2 weeks, right? It doesn't matter if it's the beginning of the year or not, right? And you're not tying it to some type of New Year's resolution that at the end of January, if you haven't done it, you feel bad. You're really just tying it to a goal that you just have that you want to do for yourself. And I think it kind of takes some of that expectation off. New year, new you. And it just talks about, listen, this is who I am year after year. And I'm going to just try to build on my skills and practice these skills.
I love that, Mercedes. So much of that resonates with me. And I'm going to be taking so many of those tips with me, especially that acknowledging no is hard. I wrote it down. I followed your advice. So we have some time for questions. We already got some really great ones. So we'll kick it off to try to get to as many as we can. So our first question is about mental health in our kids. Obviously, an important topic here. Mercedes, do you have any suggestions for helping my child deal with some of the things we've talked about today? I'm especially worried about his being depressed. He's 13 years old.
Yeah, I think it's really important to realize that depression and sadness is actually a side effect of a year like this. It comes from this level of overwhelm and uncertainty that we're all being placed in. And so, one thing to remind ourselves about mental health and mental wellness is that it doesn't mean we're absent of any distortions in it. It just means that we're learning how to build that into our understanding of ourselves. And so, when you see that your child might be depressed or that you might be a little depressed, honor that and say, this is really hard, right? It's okay to be sad. It's okay to worry about what's going to happen next, right? Let's build in some things that you and I can do to support ourselves when we're feeling this way. And so maybe realizing that everyone needs a break from virtual learning and virtual work, and building that into your schedule. Maybe it means we need to spend more time together. So having one meal together, maybe we'll always eat breakfast together, or we'll always eat dinner together. But really just thinking about this idea that having feelings is a normal part of experiencing life, and that we don't have to be worried about it, but we can sit down and say, talk to me about how you're feeling, and let's figure out some ways that we can support each other when we're feeling like this.
Mhm. And some people have been asking about actually getting some professional help. What are some qualities they should be looking for in a therapist, and what's a good way to find one that might work for their families?
What I love to do when I am telling people to look for a therapist is to first journal a bit about what it is that you feel like you need, right? Do you need someone to listen? Do you need someone to help you move through a particular situation? What is it that you need, right? Once you figure out what you need, that's what you share with whoever it is that you're working with. So you can email them, or you can look at their bios or their website and see if anything about what they're sharing is what you actually need need. I think it's also important to email or talk to them on a phone consult and be really upfront. This year has been really hard for me. I lost someone this year, or I lost my job, or X, Y, Z. Tell them exactly what's going on and exactly what you feel like you're needing, and listen to them as they are sharing with you some of the strategies and some of the interventions they might use to help you. And if that feels like a good fit, then move forward. And if it doesn't, this is a really good thing to say. Thank you so much for your time, but I'm going to continue looking for someone for my family or for myself, but I'll get back with you if I want to start services with you. It's just a really good way to let them know that you're still looking, right? And that you'll let them know when you're ready to kind of move back with them or work with them.
That's a really good way to move on if you need to, as opposed to having to say the hard yes or no right away, right?
Right, right.
So this is an interesting one about burnout in the workplace. This person asks, I feel like my manager is also burnt out, but doesn't acknowledge it. And our working relationship has gotten increasingly tense. I feel awkward bringing it up, but I also feel like it would be valuable for both of us to talk about it. What could I say?
I think this is something that can be a little bit beyond our scope. We cannot dictate how other people are going to bring awareness to their own mental health. All
Mhm.
we can do is bring awareness to our own mental health. And so I think really sitting down with yourself and thinking about, even though this person isn't acknowledging how they're feeling, you can acknowledge how you're feeling. And so you can draft an email about, so I just want to let you know that I'm feeling burnt out based on X, Y, and Z. And I would like to talk to you about some of the options for PTO or taking time off or mental health days or whatever. And this is an arbitrary example, but the idea is you want to share what your boundaries are and what you're needing, and not really rely on whether or not they are able to become aware, because that may or may not happen. But I think if you continuously are honest and upfront about kind of what you're needing, maybe it becomes a model for them to do so. But we can't unfortunately dictate how other people will bring awareness to their mental wellness. We can just really concentrate on how we're bringing awareness to it and getting our needs met. And I think that's the most unfortunate thing about working with a group of people, is that we don't really have a lot of say over how they're going to show up or how they're going to do things, but we do have say over our boundaries. So another example could even be, it's really hard when we have Zoom meetings and you yell at me or raise your voice. Would it be okay if you had something important to tell me, that we set up our own individual one-on-one meeting to have that discussion, right? Again, you're letting them know what your boundary is without saying, I need you to stop yelling, right? You can't stop them from doing that, but you can ask them maybe if they're going to yell or if they have something important to say, that they do it in a one-on-one session with you. So that way it's more private and it's between you and the supervisor.
That's really helpful. And here's one going back to the holidays. This person says they don't really want to go to a virtual holiday party, but they feel like it signals that I'm against the team. How could I explain that I just want to take a step back at this time?
I know this seems really weird, but actually say that and let them know what's going on for you. And to say, so I think that it's a great idea that we have this virtual party. However, for me, I would like to spend that time doing XYZ. I would like to spend that time finishing up my year end reports. I'd like to spend that time with my family because we're celebrating something. Or is that okay? And to really share that and let them know. So it's not about how I just don't care about the team. It's just you're sharing how you would rather spend that time, since you may be a little burnt out on virtual meetings and virtual team gatherings. And I think it's okay to share that and to ask, is it okay if I do that? Would that be something that was okay to do? And to really kind of compromise and negotiate. If they say no, then say, well, can I come for a little bit and then leave? And then really just kind of work through and negotiate how that would feel.
Great. And here's one I resonate with. Any advice for pandemic insomniacs? I find it really hard to disconnect at the end of the day, and I lie awake for hours.
Yeah. And so I think one of the things we've had to learn is that because we're all working and learning from home, to really delineate spots in our home where this is learning workspace and this is life space. And I think the bedroom or the place where you sleep should definitely be reserved for life space. And so what I would say is, if you're having a hard time cutting off, actually setting a schedule where you decide for you, based on your workload and what feels right for you, the time that you're actually going to clock out of work. So you're going to close the laptop and you're going to leave your workspace, even if it's the kitchen table, and go to another part of the house where you're doing life stuff. It's also important to set up a sleep routine. So, setting your phone to do not disturb, maybe putting it out of your room if that's something you can do. If you know you might need it, then maybe turn it face down so you don't see the bright notifications showing up on your night schedule. Also, thinking about how to set up your room so that way it is conducive to sleeping. So, if there's light coming in, maybe finding blinds or drapes that can drown out the light. If you need white noise, maybe finding some type of app that you can listen to at night. I think the Calm app and the Insight Timer are two great apps to help you meditate and listen to something, or even being white noise to kind of help you sleep at night. But the idea is to really think about, how do I kind of draw that line between it's time to go to bed now and time to stop working now? And that's something you have to decide and kind of set that schedule for yourself. And I think once you do that and you get kind of used to that, it'll actually help you to realize, okay, 9 o'clock, everything shuts down. I don't have to go to bed, but I'm no longer checking emails or looking at my files. I'm just kind of sitting in the room, reading, taking a calm bath or shower, doing something to kind of relax myself before I go to bed. And I would say start your sleep routine anywhere from 40 an hour to 45 minutes before you're supposed to go to bed.
That's helpful. One question here we have is, we talked obviously about children. That tends to be, families is where we focus at Maven some of the times, but how do we deal with the sadness and depression on my 93-year-old mom who's isolated in a nursing home? We've not been able to see her since February, and her situation makes me so sad. I know that a lot of people are dealing with a lot of loss and trauma right now, and it's really hard to balance that, especially when you have to show up and be on video every day in the workplace.
Yeah, I'll say that there's no real easy answer for that, because we do have to abide by whatever the rules are and the guidelines are that the home is doing for coronavirus. So if they're allowing visitors, then working that out. But if they're not allowing visitors, then really just understanding that that's something we can't change. But we can definitely do things like we can send them a letter or send them a package letting them know that we're thinking of them. If you're able to call them on the phone, you can do that. And at the same time, understanding that each of those interactions, even though they don't feel as exciting as being able to sit with our loved one and hold their hand or hug them, that we're still letting our loved one know that we care about them, we're thinking about them, and due to the circumstances, we can't be together, but I want you to know that I care. And I think that's the only thing that we really can do during these times, because we do have to abide by whatever kind of the stay-at-home orders are for that home or for our town or our state. And so thinking of ways that we can show our loved ones that we care about them while they're away from us, in ways that, again, might not feel as great or you don't love it, but it's still a way just to let them know. Dropping them a letter, sending them a card. It's the holidays, so sending them something that you think they would really like, and making sure that you write a note on there, like, even though we're away, we miss you and want you to know that we care about you. And again, also realizing that this is hard, and this isn't the way that any of us want things to be.
We're getting some questions here around the feeling of guilt for when they have positive things going on in their life. So my partner and I are trying to conceive, says one. Another one says they're dealing with a lot of guilt because of the crisis, and they feel selfish bringing joy about the joy of bringing a child into the world when there's people dying and getting sick. So how can they deal with the guilt that we're putting on ourselves, but yet trying to move on and feel the joy in our lives and celebrate those moments?
Yeah, I think we have to realize that these ideas of kind of guilt usually come because we're trying to uphold some type of expectation or ideology that no longer suits us. And so I think one of the things that we can do to really manage that guilt is to think about, okay, what is it that we're doing right now? Is this something that's helping us? Is this something that's making us feel good? If it is, don't feel guilty that you're doing something that's bringing you joy, even though other people are dealing with hardships. I think this year has really shown us that on a global level, we can all be dealing with the same thing. Or, as someone said to me, we're all in the same storm, we're just in different boats. And I don't think we
Mm.
should feel guilty for being in different boats. We can help and support when we can, but we also need to still remember that in order for us to stay afloat, we need to find joy, we need to find optimism, we need to find our own footing. And so it's okay to feel empathy for other people and to worry about others. And if you have any type of energetic spiritual spaces to send that positivity positivity towards them, but to also realize that in order for us to maintain our optimism and our level of mental wellness, we also have to bring joy into our lives. And so if it's conceiving, if it's bringing a child into the world, if it's getting a promotion at work, whatever it is, that's something we can feel joy for, while at the same time still feeling empathy for others who might not be having some of those positive things either. Those can both exist at the same time.
And to that, I love this one quick one here of just like, how can they provide support for a colleague who might be coming back from maternity leave at this time? Obviously, they're probably struggling with some of this stuff too, and it's hard as it is, but in a virtual world, it's even more tricky.
Yeah, I think one of the things we can do is to really just ask our colleagues how are they doing and what are they needing, and really set a space up for them to feel good about being honest about that. We can never assume what people are feeling. Knowledge is trumps assumption every time, and that's something I often teach my students. And I say, if you know what's going on, you won't assume. And so reaching out to that colleague and just saying, I know you're coming back. Is there anything I can do to support you and kind of getting back into the swing of things? Do you need anything? Letting them know if any policies have changed and just kind of giving that to them. So in order to do this, we do this now, things like that. And then also just checking in on them and saying, how is the new baby and how are you doing? And making sure that you do know that things are going on for them. And so if they have to take time off, or if they come late to a meeting, to assume that it's probably because they're a new parent and they're trying to tend to the baby, right? And so letting them know that you see that, and if they need any support, you're there. And again, like I said, supporting them on showing them what's new, showing them things that have changed since they've been gone, but at the same time, letting them let you know as well when they need something or when they have to do something for their child, and they might be kind of out, in and out, and things like that, giving them that space.
Great. And our final question, and thanks to everyone who has been sending them in. You mentioned creating some new traditions this holiday season. What are some quick ideas that we could share?
So thinking about how maybe you want to do a gift exchange. So maybe you can do a smaller one with your own family, where maybe you're used to everybody doing a white elephant. You can still do that just with your own family. You can decide that every Christmas we will do a certain type of food or a certain type of activity. You can let someone try something. So maybe if every year grandma's the one who makes this, you can decide that we're going to try something that's just our own tradition, or we're going to try to recreate grandma's recipe, right? But you can just take different things that maybe you did with your family, like the bigger extended family, and say, okay, how do I do that here? What do we really love about spending time with our family? Bringing that in. And this is actually a really good time to talk about the things that you don't love so much. So maybe we hate Auntie so and so's fruitcake that we don't have to eat this year, right? And reminding yourself of that, that at least that's something where this year we don't have to have a little bit on our plate and pretend like we like it, right? And so thinking about things like that, right? Are there new things you want to add to the meal that you never get to because you're always at someone else's house, right? Are there new ways you want to do Christmas? Maybe you want to open your gifts on Christmas Eve, or maybe you want to do gifts on Christmas morning, right? Just thinking about different ways that you and your family can find new traditions that feel good for you guys.
Great. Well, I want to thank you again, Mercedes, for taking the time to talk to us today. And for everyone here on the line, as a reminder, Maven is a free benefit for you. And we have all types of specialists, as well as mental health specialists and parenting coaches like Mercedes here. So you have access to them on Maven. And on behalf of all of us here at Maven, we want to wish you a very safe holiday. And we'd love your feedback. So if all of you can take the time to answer the survey before, signing off, that would be really great. And happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you all.